All right, good morning, everybody, or good day whenever you're listening to this. So, what I didn't want to do was just read this to you. In class, I might do that, I don't know. But just going over verbally what's right in front of your face when you just follow the attachment link, I don't know how useful that really is. So, I'll kind of just go through it with you a little bit. And I taught a lot of this. I'd say this whole document, I think it's 9 pages. Um, the majority of it does echo the things that we've talked about in class. It does kind of mirror my exact wording. Some of the things you're going to read in these notes should really remind you of what we covered in class. Other things are qualitatively the same. They're essentially the same concepts, but they're just kind of conveyed a little bit differently here. The first thing, I'm not big on acronyms. I know when I taught AP Lit, there was, TP Cast, right? The letters TPCAST. It was an acronym, right, where every letter um, stands for a certain task that you should be doing when you analyze, material in an essay. So the same, you're seeing number one, right? SOAPs. That is kind of like it's an acronym, and it stands for speaker, occasion, audience, purpose, and subject. And those are excellent things to touch on, especially in your introduction. But I kind of, instead of using soaps this year, I said, hey, remember the rhetorical triangle, right? Remember that triangle in your head. Who's doing the talking, right? Who is the speaker, right? What is their message? What is it they're trying to accomplish? How are they doing it? And then, finally, who is their audience? Who is this intended for? And just having an understanding of that, that's excellent material to put into your introduction. The other way that I taught introductions, aside from this type of thing, where it's, well, who's the speaker? What's the occasion? Who's the audience? What's the purpose? The other way I taught it was Toulmin's model. And Toulmin's model, if you go back into our notes from, the beginning of the year, Toulmin's model is a very simple little outline that explains really what has to happen um, in any type of argumentative or persuasive essay, right? The first thing, you just make your claim, right? So what is your claim? Well, your claim might have some of that introductory information in it, right? In your claim, you're probably going to tell me who the speaker is. You're probably going to give me the occasion. You might mention the audience. You're almost definitely going to give me the purpose, right? The subject of the writer. So that stuff is embedded in Toulmin's model. But what the claim would be, your declarative statement, right? And after that, you would give the warrant or your reasoning. You'd give me the reason why your claim is correct, right? And then you would give me what's called grounds or evidence. So if you're giving me um, a claim and you're giving me the data or the information that supports that claim, the types of evidence you're going to be referencing and highlighting in your essay, if you're giving me the logic that connects your claim to your evidence, like telling me why those things are going to be supporting, then you're pretty much covered. So whether you're looking at Toulmin's model or you're looking at this acronym, right, which is speaker, occasion, audience, purpose, subject, you're on the right track. All right, that's a lot of talking for just number one. Um, Coming down here, again, I said I wasn't going to just read all this to you, but I would like to kind of differentiate between appeals and style. Okay, throughout your essay, you are going to be, especially in your body paragraphs, you're going to be trying to explain, how do these rhetorical strategies, how do they work, right? And why does the author use these strategies? What is it they're trying to achieve? Um, what those strategies are, that's what you're telling me in your introduction. You're giving me that statement, right? Whether it's Toulmin's model or whatever. But you're making that statement, and then in the body paragraphs, there's two things happening, right? There are appeals. Hey, you might want to talk about an appeal to pathos or an appeal to ethos or logos, right? We've played around with that all year. Um, but you got to go further. If you're telling me that there is pathos in paragraph 4, right? There's a powerful appeal to a sentimental, emotion, whatever, right? Whether it's pity or it's patriotism. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is that you're telling me, right, that falls under that umbrella of pathos, you can't just tell me that there's pathos. You can't say, hey, in lines 2 through 4, there's an appeal to pathos. You have to tell me what is creating that. And that's where it goes from being an appeal to what these down here are, these style devices. So the appeal is, hey, lines 2 through 7, we experience a powerful ethos conveyed by the audience's or by the author's expertise. All right, that's cool. But now in that body paragraph, how is that ethos or pathos, whatever, how is it happening? So you might say, a powerful pathos of fear is conveyed to the audience in the introductory paragraph through, now it might be imagery, it might be an allusion to a historical detail that's creating fear, it might just be a pattern of diction. And by the way, like I said from day one, if you're going to analyze diction, you have to pull small pieces out of the text. You have to give me a few words and put quotes around them, explain what they're functioning to do. Or you can give me short phrases, okay? But what you can't do is just tell me, hey, diction is functioning in lines 2 through 7, and then just give me a gigantic long sentence and expect me to figure out what the words you're actually referencing, right? So anyway, if you're going to tell me there's pathos, if you're going to tell me there's ethos or logos, that's great. Put that in a topic sentence, but then within the actual body paragraph, you need to be pulling out quotes and explaining, the stylistic elements like diction or syntax or imagery or metaphor, how those things are creating that. And sometimes if you want to talk about pathos, you might say, well, the tone is really resonating with a certain pathos. And the tone is going to be the product of things like diction, right? Okay, so I'm not going through it all. But down here, this number 3, this is really saying, hey, answer, this little sub 1 and sub 2, answer these in your body paragraphs, okay? And again, in your intro, you want to touch on this stuff, okay? And this is now just kind of established for you here, all right? That's under format. And they give a little example of what an introduction could look like. And now they do the same for the body. And you've heard me talk this year about being chronological, right? When you become a more sophisticated writer one day, maybe professionally, maybe you'll go into academics, right? If you're, submitting a journal entry in the modern psychology, you know, passages or whatever, you can write your stuff pretty much however you want. And you might have a really important reason for not being chronological. You might be topical, right? You might be going procedurally. Who knows? That's fine. But in this 45-minute essay, there is no reason to skip around and make the text that you're covering unnecessarily complicated. Start at the beginning, move through the middle, and finish at the end of the text, right? So again, you want to work chronologically. That does not mean you have to hit everything. You're not gonna. You're probably gonna skip some things. But you don't want to leave large pieces of the text unacknowledged. You might say, hey, you know what? There's nothing in lines 10 through 20 that I really need to discuss, but then you just give me a connecting sentence, right? In lines 10 through 20, the author continues to convey his sentiment of, sorrow for the experiences of slaves during this time in history. The next major, argumentative device occurs in line 11 or line 15 or whatever. But, so you might have that what we call connective tissue where, hey, I'm going to skip this part. Well, I'm not going to skip it. I'll acknowledge it. I'll explain a little bit about what's going on, but I'm going to use it as a bridge to get to my next big piece of evidence. That's way different than just skipping lines. So you want to move chronologically and start at the beginning and work through. Things that you're not going to focus on, you still want to acknowledge. You want to explain a little bit of how they connect to what you're going to say. All right. They're talking about dividing the text into sections. Yeah, that's probably a smart way of going. These are transitional words. All right. Every analysis paragraph must. So I'm not going to, again, read all this to you, but you definitely want to take a look. And then they back it up. They give you some pretty decent examples of what they're referring to. And I think this is taken from a President Reagan speech after the Space Shuttle Challenger, yeah, tragically exploded. I think I was in third grade when that happened. That was pretty horrible. All right. And you'll see, people, this keeps going. All right. These are just nice ways of kind of clarifying very concretely for you what this looks like. And now you'll see, again, all year, I kind of try to encourage you to elevate your vocabulary. You know, the bottom line is that when you use monosyllabic words, and this to me should not make sense, but it just tells you how primitive language really is. If you're using words that have very few syllables, you are using very simple diction. It's that simple. I don't know why, it's just how it is. When you use polysyllabic verbs, when you use, or any words that have multiple syllables, you're using more sophisticated language. And the idea behind that is not just looking smart, but you're conveying more nuanced, more complex, more sophisticated meanings, right? You're elevating your writing to match your brilliant thinking. All right, so those are just some encouraging language here. We have verbs, and you know that, when you use verbs like says or states or writes, those are very low level. They don't really accomplish a great deal of meaning. So these are just, you're not going to memorize all these and walk in to your online AP session, but you might want to start thinking about, getting a handful of these that you think you will use more often. Okay, so analyzing diction, nothing new. We've covered this, but what I have to say I've noticed, and I think I'm going to repeat myself because I just said it a minute ago, I've noticed the one big, uh, I don't know, liability, the one struggle that people are having, which is keeping them, at least in my class, keeping them from doing this effectively. They don't get the idea, right, that it's what and how, or what and why. So you need to give me, right, a statement about the diction, like what is it accomplishing, right? And that's something that you might want to go to check, these adjectives, or not those are, but like things like this, like describe the type of diction, right? Like, can you actually classify the diction in an intelligent way and then explain what is it doing, right? What function is it having? And you need, like I said, to give me short quotations, not long ones, short ones where you just pull a few words into that quote and you explain what the words are functioning to do. What kind of tone are they creating? What attitude are they projecting of the author? What effect do they have on the audience? All right, so I'm certainly not going to read this long list, but below are just a few words that you may use to describe the type of diction. All right. So review this on your own, people, but again, it will echo a lot of what we discussed in class. And here we have syntax. This is more of a streamlined version of what I provided with you earlier in the year. I gave you a chart, which hopefully you still have, but the chart really went into more detail about different types of syntactical structures. And I think we used the plum pickers, that kind of that weird, bizarre stream of consciousness about the poor guy who was up there in the hot sun picking a variety of fruit and he passes out. Well, anyway, this is more of a streamlined, more focused version of that chart. All right. I would not go into this looking to write about syntax, but if the sentence structure popped out at me, if I just noticed certain things, then I'd want to have the confidence to be able to write about those. And then finally, we're going to conclude in like 20 seconds, people, but analyzing tone, same thing. They're telling you kind of what you need to do, what it could look like, right? Like real simple. And it just gives you more of an elevated series of examples of the types of language you could use. All right, people, I just wanted to go over this. I thought this was a pretty useful resource. Talk to you soon.